Cultivating other crops is risky since market price fluctuations can cause enormous losses. For instance, in 2021, cotton prices went up to reach 110 per kilogram, and farmers increased its cultivation, but the price plummeted by nearly half the very next year. Tamil Nadu's paddy paradox. Cauvery Delta's intensive farming drains nutrients. Switch to high-yielding paddy varieties has undermined crop diversity while not delivering farmers big profits or consumers healthy food. Thennilavan M, a farmer in Thanjavur, says that the soil of his paddy farm has been ruined by decades of chemical fertilizer application. Thennilavan M, a farmer in Thanjavur, says the soil in his paddy farm has been damaged by long-term chemical fertilizer use. Tamil Nadu's Cauvery Delta has grown rice for millennia, but environmental alarm bells warn that the days might be numbered for large-scale rice cultivation. Within a few decades, intensive farming practices have changed almost everything about the region, with potentially irreversible consequences. It has intensified water consumption even as the Cauvery River controversy strangled water supplies. The delta is nearly drained now and its topsoil depleted of nutrients. Healthy native varieties that nourished the soil and the farmers who cultivated it healthy have all but vanished. Cauvery Delta, the largest delta in South India, is vital to Tamil Nadu's food security. This is the second installment of a series of reports on rice farming in the region by Navya PK, and it explores the implications of the transition to high-yield paddy. The hum of customers does not subside even at night at Guna Traders, a big fertilizer store in Manargudi, in the midst of Tamil Nadu's Cauvery Delta. The Samba season, the Delta's largest paddy cultivation season, is at hand, and the shop is stacked to the ceiling with tens of thousands of bright plastic containers containing pesticides and fertilizers, owned by local as well as multinational corporations. The paddy farms of Cauvery Delta, over the coming couple of months, will absorb these and many more such chemicals. Since the Green Revolution, high-yielding varieties of paddy have displaced nearly everything else in the Delta, but this didn't translate into farmers' fat profits or consumers' wholesome food. In part 2 of this series on the Delta's impending water crisis, we explore the effects of the transition to high-yield paddy. Such varieties require heavy doses of chemical fertilizers and pesticides whose multiple uses have impoverished the Delta's soil, which in turn results in the rice produced here being deficient in certain nutrients that are vital for our well-being and development. Although the farmers are trying to make up for the destroyed soil by employing even more fertilizers, the situation is further aggravated. Only the large-scale fertilizer and pesticide firms appear to benefit from the intensive chemical farming system, and not directly the farmers themselves. High-yield paddy brings an end to crop variety the frink. In the 7 Delta districts we are examining, paddy rules. And in 5 of the 7 districts, paddy is so dominant that it's cultivated in 2/3 of the entire cropped land. Made with flourish. Traditionally, Delta farmers used to cultivate mostly one season of paddy, along with pulses and a few millets. During the British colonial rule, the British government encouraged 2-season cultivation of paddy to some degree to cater to their requirements. But with the Green Revolution, 2- or 3-season cultivation became the rule. The state's paddy research stations regularly produced high-yielding varieties well-suited to paddy monoculture. MSP led farmers to grow the crop almost single-mindedly, and chemical fertilizers gained popularity with subsidies. Native varieties, which require less water and no chemical fertilizers, were totally bypassed in the process. The rice cultivated here are nearly all high-yielding varieties. High-yielding paddy puts farmers in a trap of low earnings and high expenses. Moving to paddy monocropping did not translate into profits for farmers. The majority of farmers this correspondent interviewed owned only 4 to 8 acres of land and made a profit of only 2 to 3 lakh annually. The majority claim their expenditure on cultivating high-yielding varieties is 30,000 or more per acre. P.R. Pandian, General Secretary of the Cauvery Delta Farmers Association, explains, "If you factor in everything like the interest the farmer pays on the loan taken, land used for cultivation, and the labor of the family, the cost is Rs 45,000 an acre. In that way, the farmer is not generating any profit. Farmers typically get only 40,000 to 54,000 per acre from paddy sales, depending on the produce. The figures in this section are drawn from farmers' accounts. We have not independently confirmed them. PR Pandian, General Secretary of the Cauvery Delta Farmers Association, reports that farmers are not being profitable. Several Delta farmers survive by taking up extra non-farm activities. PR Pandian, General Secretary, Cauvery Delta Farmers Association, contends that farmers are not earning any profits. Farmers in the deltas manage to keep body and soul together by doing other non-farm activities, image by Navya PK. But farmers still cultivate paddy since the government buys it, and the MSP guarantees fixed, though low, returns each season. Cultivating other crops is risky, since market price fluctuations can cause enormous losses. For instance, in 2021, cotton prices went up to Rs 110 per kilogram, and farmers increased its cultivation, but the price plummeted by nearly half the very next year. Thennilavan states, "The amount of money is not sufficient for us. I'm still cultivating paddy only because my ancestors have been cultivating it for centuries and we cannot leave the soil now." Farmers claim that a third or a fourth of their farming expense is spent on purchasing fertilizers, pesticides, and weedicides alone. However, most of this use of fertilizers is avoidable, experts claim. High-yielding paddy monoculture and fertilizer usage are draining the soil of nutrients. High-yielding paddy monoculture and concomitant fertilizer application are draining the delta's soil of nutrients, such as nitrogen and zinc. This implies that the rice grown today is not as proteinaceous and mineralized as rice used to be, and thus is contributing to stunting, anemia, and other chronic diseases related to malnutrition. Delta districts, along with other rice-growing districts of Tamil Nadu, reported low nitrogen in almost all the soil samples analyzed under the Union Government Soil Health Card Scheme during 2023-24. Under the scheme, 2.5 lakh soil samples were analyzed across Tamil Nadu in 2023-24. Prof. P. Stalin, Assistant Professor of Agronomy at Annamalai University, Cuddalore, tells us, when the same crop is repeatedly cultivated, the nutrients are extracted at the same soil level, i.e. at 10 to 15 centimeters depth from the surface. And because paddy has a fibrous root, it only absorbs nutrients from the upper layer. Continuous cultivation of the same type, like BPT, which earns more money, aggravates the situation. Dr. R. Jagadiswaran, Professor of Soil Science at State University Tamil Nadu Agricultural University, says replacing manure, which adds organic carbon to the soil, with chemical fertilizers is another reason for low nitrogen content. Organic carbon contributes 90% of nitrogen in the soil, he explains. Even if you add excess urea to make up for this, 40% of the nitrogen remains in the soil only, since the rest is lost to leaching, denitrification, etc. Manure application has also reduced, according to him, because of the reduction in cattle population, coupled with cessation of the traditional method of recycling farm waste after harvest. Low soil nitrogen affects protein formation in rice, so we will be consuming low-protein rice. The grain will contain a higher than average proportion of carbohydrate to proteins and minerals, says Prof. Jagadiswaran. Soil health card statistics also indicate that Thanjavur and Thiruvarur are among the bottom 5 districts of Tamil Nadu as far as soil zinc content is concerned, with 4/5 of their soil samples being deficient in zinc. Similar to nitrogen, zinc too is continuously leached from the soil due to paddy monoculture. According to Professor Jagadiswaran, although the Agriculture Department suggests applying zinc sulfate every season, farmers might not necessarily do so. Low zinc concentrations lead to stunting, short stature for age in children, immune deficiency, neurological and reproductive issues. Furthermore, the low organic carbon content in delta districts lowers the absorption of basic nutrients such as phosphorus and micronutrients such as iron, thus rendering the rice less nutritious. A recent study by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, ICAR, a Union Agriculture Ministry arm, in 2023 revealed that the zinc content in high-yielding rice varieties has decreased by 1/3 and iron content by 1/4 in the last 50 years, while the level of toxins such as arsenic in rice has increased manifold. Although the Green Revolution had made India food sufficient, it has undermined our nutritional security and increased the population's vulnerability to diseases, the study added. Farmers use excess fertilizers to compensate. A few Delta farmers who we interviewed are conscious that the soil in their area is run down, but remark that they cannot help but put more fertilizers to make up for it, which aggravates soil degradation and adds to pesticides. Conscious of the fact that the food produced is less healthy, some of the farmers actually cultivate native varieties of rice on a small area of their farm so that at least their family has nutritious food. Thanjavur farmer Thennilavan M explains, "Before, the quality of soil was better because we used manure, coconut husk, etc. Nowadays, the soil is so degraded that I need to apply more and more fertilizer to produce good yield." Fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemicals piled at Guna Traders, one of the largest shops for farm inputs in the Cauvery Delta. Fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemicals piled up at Guna Traders, a major shop for agricultural inputs in the Cauvery Delta, imaged by Navya PK. Our examination of data on NPK fertilizer usage indicates that 4 Delta districts, namely Thanjavur, Cuddalore, Pudukkottai, and Tiruchirappalli, consume higher levels of nitrogen-based fertilizers compared to the state average. These districts, with the exception of Pudukkottai, consume higher levels of potassium-based fertilizers compared to the average too. Use of phosphate-based fertilizers was above average in Cuddalore and Tiruchirappalli. In Guna Traders that retails fertilizers to nearly 60,000 Delta farmers, owner Vivek Rajagopal explains how farmers purchase 110 to 150 kgs of urea per acre during a season. That is 2.5 times TNAU's advised application for Samba season. Urea is subsidized hugely by the government at Rs 266 for a 45 kilograms bag, so they use more than required. Subsidized fertilizer overuse aggravates the issue. Although farmers believe that overuse of urea will enhance production, Prof. Stalin explains that it is not true and is indeed worsening the situation. After applying urea, the plant becomes greener immediately, hence farmers believe that the plant is responding well. But it exhausts the nitrogen before flowering stage, so no effect on production. Actually, overuse of urea makes paddy stalks bow into the ground and also leads to soil and water pollution. It also invites pests, which in turn make farmers use more pesticides. Rajagopal claims to sell 10 crore liters of pesticides every year. In Cuddalore, where excess N, P, and K fertilizers are used, a fifth of the soil samples are acidic. According to Prof. Stalin, fertilizers are predominantly acidic in nature, so their repeated use has rendered the soil acidic here. This lowers paddy's nutrient uptake, particularly calcium and magnesium. Excess use of fertilizer in the long run will lower yield and pose a threat to food security, soil scientists warn. Prof. Stalin adds, TNAU's blanket suggestion on urea itself is too much for the Delta, and that it can even be cut in half and topped up with organic fertilizers depending on soil tests. Before planting paddy, you need to do soil tests to understand the nutrient availability in soil and create a fertilization schedule accordingly. But farmers treat this as a chore. While the Agriculture Department analyzes soil samples and provides recommendations on the use of fertilizer to individual farmers under the Soil Health Card scheme, only a fraction of farms are tested. In 2023-24, only 2.5 lakh out of almost 80 lakh farm holdings in the state were tested under the scheme. All over the Delta, the most powerful fertilizer company is Tamil Nadu-based Southern Petrochemical Industries Corporation, SPIC, while MNCs such as Syngenta and Bayer, as well as Indian companies such as Tata, dominate the pesticide market. Bayer's Roundup is most widely used among herbicides. Bayer India posted a turnover of Rs 51 billion, and SPIC posted Rs 19 billion in 2023-24 FY. Devinder Sharma, food and trade policy analyst, states that the government itself is subsidizing corporates and chemical farming with subsidies on urea, diammonium phosphate, DIP, etc. There is no denying that there are lobbies for chemical farming, and the biggest lobbies are agricultural universities. They are the biggest stumbling block when you seek change towards healthy agriculture. Part 3 of this inquiry will explore what, if anything, are the potential alternatives to transform farming practices to a more sustainable future. If you enjoyed this analysis, like this video, Subscribe and let's argue in the comments. Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, take care and stay safe.